G'day, today we are talking about steel trays. This is a continuation of our series on Project 6-Seater, and in that series this is also a continuation of looking at buying used steel trays, fitting toolboxes, wiring in a tray and all that sort of jazz. So what I'm looking at today really is it worth buying a used steel tray and then modifying it? So this steel tray we've covered, we bought used. It was cheap, it was only about $1,000. Good tray, nice and solid, no rust, reasonable headboard, good floor, had fabricated toolboxes both sides, had a genuine Toyota fuel filler with still spare keys, mud guards, all the mounts, everything was ready to go, tail lights, number plate mount. You're not going to buy that, get that made for you for $1,000, so bought it. It wasn't colour matched. This was painted in Toyota in one of the granite coloured kind of dark greys for the N70 Hilux, and we've repainted it white in Raptor. You can see a video on that, that's also covered. And this is how it's come out. Now what we did when we bought this is I was pretty happy with it. It was going to be fine. It was going to go on one of the work utes, and then we actually decided to put it on my ute. And for that, I wanted to change the headboard over. So we actually ended up making a bigger headboard and beefed it up, made it out of box. It's got a nice bend over there to try and tape it to the tray of the ute. We put a new headboard in it, box top and bottom. And we've got a new rail system to protect the rear glass, and we've beefed this up as well. It was made out of a very small box, and now we've got some nice tube in there. And all things considered, how it looks, I'm pretty happy with how it's come up, bar the Raptor, but you can see the separate video on that. But all things considered, I think that it's come up quite well. Happy with it. The headboard looks great. It's very, very solid. It's been good to mount my work lights on, my roof lights, power socket and such. It's come up pretty well. Other things we've modified, we've fitted the trundle tray. You can see a separate video on that. We had to move the number plate mount. We've kept the tail lights. They're old halogen bulb tail lights, but they're the original Toyota branded tail lights, number plate lights for the N70 Hilux. And the reason I haven't changed them is because it fits the factory plugs. So all we had to do is take the tub off, leave the wiring there and plug in those factory Toyota tail lights. Really, really simple. In fact, we had a Colorado, one of the last of the Colorados, and one thing that was great about if you do buy the factory tail lamps and such is they plug straight into the lumen with that Colorado. It also had a reversing camera which you could buy from Holden, and it plugs straight into the factory loom and would work off your factory head unit. So that's the real utility there. With these factory Toyota, even though they're halogens, yep, I'd much rather LEDs, less current draw, not that that's a big deal, but your propensity for blowing bulbs, getting crap in the connections, having a dodgy connection, the indicator's not working, far, far, far less with a good quality LED tail light. You're probably never going to have to service it, fit it and forget. Whereas with a halogen, probably sooner or later, you're going to have to replace a bulb, or you're going to have a dodgy connection you're going to have to clean out. So I would much rather having LEDs, but it wasn't just a cost-saving, strategy with this tray. The other thing we were doing was it plugged straight into the loom, nice and simple. So just ease. It was already there, the mounts were there, just plug it in, plug and play, away we go. Okay, this came with folded drop sides, and the drop sides have have box that fits into there's an open tubing here. The end posts go in there, and then you've got drop locks there, drop locks on your posts at the back. That's where your drop sides will go 1, 2, 3. We've also made a builder's rack to suit the headboard, which also drops into this. And then, so I've got a builder's rack on this, and that's why my lights currently unplugged. That's how they, all daisy chain, how they plug in. 2 bolts under that and that. This is on a piece of aluminium bracket, undo that, unplug the lights, take that away, and then I can use my builder's rack if I want to, which is quite useful considering you've only got 1.8 of tray depth. And for someone who used to have a single cab utility and then a Ram 3500, I certainly miss the tray space. I would like a lot longer tray than I have. But anyway, 1.8. You know, you can go longer than that on a dual cab if you want to, even on an N70. But then it starts to hang over your tow ball. We actually have another system to go into here which extends the tray a little bit. I'll do that a separate video on that one. But in terms of modifications, we completely new headboard. The whole old headboard was cut off completely. We cut that off, added a completely new headboard. This, all of this, that's all new. We've put a trundle tray on that required us to alter the mounts. One of the big disappointments of doing this is from an N70. We pulled it off an N70 and was going straight back on an N70. But because we fitted the trundle tray, we had to modify the mounts because we had to lift the tray up, which was an annoyance to say the least, because otherwise if we didn't fit the trundle tray, it would have just fit straight on. The loops that go around the tail lights, as in the trundle tray video, you'll see that. We had to shorten them so the trundle drawer could come out, and we had to move the number plate mount off to one side. We've run wiring in the box. You can see wiring the tray. That video talks about that. We've run wiring up the box to run the roof lights, the work lights, and the power socket. That's all in there, so you can't see any of that. And there's also a reversing camera, not a reversing camera, sorry, a dash cam mounted up here. And again, the wiring runs through there with a grommet into the headboard, and all the wiring's concealed and safe inside the headboard. And we've got that rear dash cam pointing backwards mounted on the headboard as well. That's one of the real utilities. The original was in box, and I could have kept it in box. But one of the utilities of having box as opposed to tube is it's really easy to mount stuff on. Work lights and such, you're dealing with a flat surface. So that's really, really nice and easy. Other modifications we've done is this ute on the previous tray that it had had two reversing sensors, and we've moved them over. They're mounted there near the tail light. The system was already in the back of the ute, it was already there, so it's just a case of unplugging them from the old aluminium tray that came off this, and then putting them on. Very simple, and we've retained, so we've got a reversing camera, we've got reversing sensors, and we've got the rear dash cam on it now. A rope rail all stayed the same, mud guards all stayed the same, number plate mount was moved off to one side, and then we've put a lot of these anchor points. So flip up anchor mounts, we've got 6 of them, 1 here, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 down in the floor of the tray, and we've got 2 of them in the headboard. Really, really good addition. I wasn't going to put them in the headboard, and then we thought, yeah, no, why not? We've got a couple spare, we'll put them in the headboard. Awesome addition, really easy to tie things back on the headboard load. We had to move some wheelie bins, we've had to move some tall gas bottles. You know, you can tie them on here, and we can also tie them up high around the headboard, but they're really, really good to pull things back up against the headboard. And I'm a massive fan of that in the floor. Particularly if you ever got to move a motorbike or something, it's just that's why I put 3 of them in there, because they're recessed into the floor. They're not going to impact us putting a pallet or something on there. All recessed into the floor, and nice and easy to tie things down with. So, and they're not expensive. You can buy them for, you know, $10. So, you know, for the sake of $80, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and infinite. And then with the rope rail at the front and at the back, we've got not infinite, but a lot of different possibilities on how to tie different things down. And if you've got drop sides on, one of the real great things about having tie down points recessed into your floor is that you don't have to pull over your drop sides, which if you've ever done that, sometimes you can get the ratchet strap underneath the drop side, but a lot of times you can't. You've got to go over the top of your drop side, and then when you ratchet it down, you bend in depending on how strong your drop sides are, but you can very easily bend them in. If you've got an aluminium tray, you can already pick up your aluminium drop sides probably and just bend them yourself. But if you put a ratchet strap over it on a high load and you ratchet strap it really tight, they'll bend in like blazes. And with the ones in the floor, there's just no movement in them at all, and you can tie something down absolutely rock solid. So it ain't gonna move. So that's really, really useful. So they're the modifications that we've done basically. So it's not a small amount of things. And this is the point of this video. Is it worthwhile buying a used tray to modify it? Now, sure, there's some, in terms of the value of this tray, buying it for $1,000, solid tray, I could have just given it a repaint, put it on, would have cost me a couple $100 more than what I bought it for. I think that's a good deal. Would be color coded to the ute, easy, nice and simple. However, and because of the side toolboxes, tail lights, and that it fits straight on, I think that's a really, really good buy. The problem is in modifying it, it's a pain in the backside. We had to modify the mounts to get the trundle drawer in, and we had endless modifications to try and get the headboard done to make sure it fits, accommodate the fuel filler, doesn't leave too much of a gap, sits right with the roof line, sits right with the line of the side of the ute, is going to be wide enough to cover the tyres. If you're building from scratch, it's way easier. In fact, a few years ago, I went to a local tray builder and was quite cross when I went to them and said, look, I've got a steel tray, I just bought this ute, can you turn it into a tipper? And they said, nah, it's going to be cheaper just to build you a new one. I said, how could it possibly be cheaper to build me a new one? Well, the reason is because of the modifications required. And you've got to take the ute off, you've got to take the tray off, you've got to trial fit it, you've got to take it off again, you trial fit it. The amount of times this thing came off and on, fitting the trundle drawer, then adjusting the height, and then if you adjust the height for the trundle drawer, then that's going to adjust the height of your headboard, so then you've got to factor that in. Do I need to make this lower? And all these different things, if you just built it from scratch, you just measure it up, flat piece of checker plate for the floor, do your box, do your rails, it would be way easier. Look, if you factor your time at nothing, I think you're going to save some money. If you factor that your time's worth nothing at all, there's no dollar value to your time, you're just going to do it as a bit of a something to muck around with on the weekend, fair enough. You're going to save some money in your checker plate floor if the floor's good. If you keep the body of the tray the same, and you're just doing something like fitting a trundle tray and adjusting your mounts, fitting a headboard, changing the headboard over, modifying it to fit side toolboxes, and you say, my time's worth nothing, I'm just going to have a bit of a play with it, you are going to save some money because you're going to get some components as long as you buy the tray cheap and less for the value of the individual components. If you have to buy it, and you'll see this from time to time, partially built tray, maybe the floor, maybe it's floor and frame and headboard, but no floor in it, and the person's trying to get their material cost back. They want their material cost back, so you're getting their labour for free. I wouldn't buy that. I think that's a waste of time because by the time you modify it and cut it down and everything, your saving probably ain't going to be that great unless, again, you're valuing your time at nothing. So you'd really need to get the materials for a significant bargain. But I think really the advice I got from a commercial tray builder was warranted. I wouldn't do this again. We've done this twice now. We fitted the tray where we just need to alter the mounts. No problem, easy. If you buy a quality tray with a quality finish, you don't need to repaint it, but it's off the wrong ute and you know the dimensions of the tray will bolt straight onto you. All you have to do is change where the mounts go. I would do that. That's not a big operation and you'll save some money. Just moving the mounts is pretty simple. If you were buying an N70 tray that would look really good on an N80 or an N80 tray with good right dimensions to put on an N70, you've got two mounts that are the same and you've got two mounts that are different. So that's going to be even easier again. So if you know stuff like that, that'll shortcut it a little bit. But if you're just moving mounts, that's fine. But if you've got extensive modifications of a tray or you're buying a tray that's partially built, you've really got to get the material for a fraction of the cost. And by the time you've mucked around with it, I think you'll find the time you put into it will be greater or equal to the saving. So if you're valuing your time at nothing, it's just a little bit of a thing to muck around with on the weekend, fine. But otherwise, I probably wouldn't buy a tray to modify. I'd buy a tray to put straight onto a ute. If it's a really good quality tray, you say, yep, I like that just as it is. I'm just going to take it off this ute and put it on another one. I would do that. In fact, if I was buying a brand new ute and I wanted to put a steel tray on it, that's exactly what I would do. I would watch wreckers until I found someone wrecking somebody who's bought a ute and they want to get rid of it because it's not the tray they want, or they want to go back to a tub. I would buy one of those off a late model ute and just move it straight over and save myself a few $1,000s. But if you've got it modified extensively, in my opinion, it's not worth it. This was way too much headache for what it was worth. I'm happy with the end result, apart from the paint. Again, subject for another video. But, I'm happy with the result. I'm happy how it came out. But the cost of that, in terms of the time it takes to modify this, particularly because of all the trial fitting that you do, I wouldn't muck around with it. In fact, the fellow who works with me, he said, next time if we're going to do this again, we'll just build it from scratch. He's right, exactly. That's exactly what we'll do. So again, it can be done. What were the hardest things to do? Hardest things to do to modify to an established tray is the headboard, and getting the headboard to fit the ute while working with an established, tray platform. And the other thing that was hardest to do was lifting the mounts and then adjusting the headboard appropriately and getting it to sit not stupid, so not sitting like the tray sitting up on its tippy toes, trying to get it to sit nice while accommodating that rear trundle draw. So they were the most difficult parts of it. Neither were insurmountable. We got it done, but it was just that little bit of additional mucking around that could have been avoided potentially if we'd gone a different route. So anyway, for what it's worth, I wouldn't do it if you're a competent welder and you want to have, or you just want to have a play around, learn how to weld, and you want to modify a tray, your time's not valuable to you, that's fine. But if you're time short, if you're time poor, and you want to get it done quick, I would suggest, if you say, I could buy this tray, would extensively modify it, I would start from scratch. That's what I would do. So for what it's worth, and put lots of tie downs in it. If you're building yourself, these things are $10 each, put them everywhere. They're awesome, and accommodate it so that you can put your wiring away. So watch for further videos. We'll talk about the reversing camera. We've covered a bunch of other stuff. We'll talk about the toolboxes and all that sort of options if you're interested in tray building. We'll see that in another video. I hope this was useful for you. Thanks for watching.